So, hello and welcome to another edition of the GPVWC review show. I'm Michael Pitman and I'm here with Mr. James Kirk and Lewis McGlade. Say hello, chaps.
Hello.
Hiya.
So, we're going to be reviewing last week's results, going through the Italian Grand Prix. We've got three different series here at GPVWC. So, we'll go through the primary series of the Superleague. We've then got the Supercup and the Formula Challenge, all of which happened on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday last week, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me, we're all very excited about again, so I wanted to, anyone who didn't manage to catch them, I want to let you all know exactly what happened and what changes that made to our title race as it is now hotting up towards, we're getting towards the end of the season now I suppose, we're in the latter half, so let's start off with Super League. So again, this is the primary series, this one we do the full race distance, and we've had a few changes of lineups as well, but the actual three drivers that made it onto the podium managed to finish off with a very familiar sight of Lucas Euler at the very top there with a midnight, managing to win ahead of Giuseppe Ranieri, who is a new face to Super League, and then Peter Casa in the Torrent as well. So that was our podium, lads. What did we think to the obviously slightly different podium than we've got used to? We got quite used to Brick being up there. What are we thinking?
Well, I think Casa, excellent podium for Torrent. Euler taking advantage of Heasterbeek's absence. Good on him. I was so impressed with Ranieri. Myself and Lewis in our Super Cup commentary, we've seen Oscar Hardwick and Ranieri very much become almost like an upper tier Super Cup field, and we've always, we've kind of been wondering, how they do in Super League. We saw Oscar Hardwick come in for Hawkeye back in career. He took an 8th place. The Nijo is a race-winning car though, and the fact that Ranieri has taken it to second on his debut, let's not forget, I think it was an excellent job by him. But I will say that I think Lee Morris threw away the victory in this one. Went on the wrong tyre strategy and suffered because of it.
Yeah, I agree. Ranieri, though, super impressive. I mean, I remember watching it with, I can't remember we were in the call or whatever, James, but, it was so close. But Ranieri was at the point of, I was wondering if he could have seriously have won it within like the last 10 laps. He was closing in on Euler pretty quickly. It was a very interesting way for the race to end. There was, the odd jewels sparking up throughout the grid. It was absolutely excellent, a way to show what Super League can look like if we have the right conditions and the right strategies and everything like that. It was absolutely excellent.
Well, you spoke there, Lewis, about the conditions and the strategies. I mean, obviously we saw that we had rain in this race as well, which is becoming quite a regular feature now, but it does spark up an interesting debate on strategy. I mean, you look at the guys, say the top 10, they range from doing one-stop strategies to 4. I mean, that's a huge difference of mindset in some of these drivers. Do you think anyone made a massive tactical error? I mean, you alluded there, James, to Lee Morris, which is a name who's sort of come back into the fold again.
Lee has got the ability to win in this Kerno, which he's teamed up with, and we've seen this right from the off. He still absolutely has the speed, and this should really have been his race. Talking to him afterwards, he was like, I had to try something different. Realistically, though, I don't think he needed to. He absolutely had the pace to run away from Euler, even if he just covered him at the pit stops. And I think as much as I want to believe him that he should have tried something different, I think he threw away a win personally.
Yeah, that was 12 points that could really have helped him. But yeah, I mean, when you throw away a race win in strategy, as a driver in the cockpit, you can seriously just you'll be thinking about this going, just what if I'd have done it right? And that can really play against you even going into the next few rounds. I mean, if we have mixed conditions in Spa, which, at Spa, mixed conditions are kind of a given with that track most of the time. And if there are mixed conditions, it will stay in the mind of Lee Morris, with these strategy choices. And I think that could cost him more points even in the future if he just constantly thinks about it.
Do you think he'll have taken more confidence from this race, or do you think he'll see it as a missed opportunity? Obviously, he's still very, very new coming back, like you say, moving over to Kerno. I mean, I'm looking forward to the Lee Morris story at the end of the year because there's obviously a lot gone on there. But do you think he's actually sort of growing? Are we expecting to see him come out with good results again going forwards, or do you think this was like a one-off? I mean, he was only like 0.2 of a second behind Euler in qualifying, so he obviously had the pace at this track. But do we see him? Or do you think we'll see him next race challenging for the win again?
The Lee Morris Kerno is miles away from the Lee Morris of Nordschen, and he's taken a bit of time off and he's come back. I mean, you look at Steve Verloy, his teammate. He's a midfield player most of the time. And there are some drivers that absolutely outperform the car. Lee Morris is one of those people, and I'm absolutely convinced that if he does stay with Kerno until the end of the year, he will have a win. I'm almost dead certain of it.
He's definitely got the pace, I will agree.
Very confident there, lads. I'm very impressed. And you've already alluded to Ranieri there. I mean, he was probably, other than Euler, who obviously did a fantastic drive to get the win again. I mean, it was so impressive to come in, like you say, on his debut, to actually only, in the end, miss out on the win by 0.7 of a second. Obviously, it is a race-winning car, and to fill in some quite big shoes, because coming off the back of 3 wins, I was just overly impressed. I couldn't give the guy more praise than I want that to emphasise that as much. It's just a fantastic drive.
There will be some teams in the midfield and lower down that will be wanting to snatch up Hardwick and Ranieri as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
Because they are extremely, extremely good drivers. And for a midfield outfit, when you got these two amazing talents coming up through the ranks, you're going to try and convince them, we know we're where we are at the moment, but with your help, what can we achieve?
Definitely. I mean, you would do if you were one of those managers sitting there. But if you won the 2 drivers, obviously they are limited to only drive 4 races in the Superleague, as long as they keep driving in the Supercup. And I can't see with both of them, which we'll get onto, I'm sure, moving into looking at the championship there. I can't see any of them permanently moving up at this stage. But it'd be interesting to see if they do their 4 races up here, because it can make a big difference to the championship as well, because dropping certain points here and there. On which basis? The championship standings now for the drivers first. Shall we go through? So obviously with Hesterbrook taking a week off almost, we've got Lucas Euler, who's now taken the lead again at the top of the championship. He's now 20 points clear, which does make, if he does make it to the end of each race from now on, does make it quite a difficult gap. Dave Carr Smith still sitting there in 3rd with Alex Cooper in 4th. Do we think missing a race has really hampered Hesterbrook's chances of the title?
Yeah, I do think so, because the championship was pretty close going here, and now there's a 20-point gap. And although Heasterbeek's been on a pretty good charge at the moment, I think it's going to cost him. I don't know if it will cost him the championship, because I think he may pull it back. But I mean, that was a lot of points that Euler got in Monza that Heasterbeek is going to be. I was kind of cursing himself that he didn't appear. For whatever reason, he couldn't have arrived and scored points. And done some damage limitation, and that's what it looks like it's going to have to be for the rest of the championship.
I think that Heasterbeek's actually still fine. 20 points is a perfectly surmountable gap. The Nijo, in my opinion, is absolutely the fastest car on the grid at the moment. Because you look at Tom Vandervoort there, he came home 7/10 behind Alex Cooper in the midnight, and Vandervoort had an extra stop than Cooper. Let's move that up 20 seconds up the road. So that's 30 seconds behind the leader. He would have finished ahead of Morris had he not had that extra pit stop. And you look at Ranieri, first time in, already got 2nd place. I think Heasterbeek, if he can keep on finishing first, ever Euler is, within 4 races, the gap will be back down to 0.
That's a lot of races though, James. But moving on to the Constructors' Championship, Midnight's leading the way with 355 points. That's 42 points ahead of Nijo, and they... Now obviously you just alluded to there that Giuseppe Ranieri came 2nd behind Euler, and that Vandervoort came behind Cooper. So is that, if you were in Nijo, do you look at that as a lost race, really. You came behind both the Midnights, and you've lost a Drivers' Championship lead. Is it? If you're in their garage, are you disappointed by the weekend?
It's
I wouldn't
difficult
be.
to say. No, I mean it's. I guess you could call it a lost weekend because He's to Beak wasn't there, but at the same time they still got a second and sixth position.
And a second with a very promising, rookie driver to the Super League. So I don't think they can. There's a lot they can take away from it. On the good side of things, yes, they've lost some points in both constructors and they've lost the lead of the drivers, but there's a lot they can take from this race. That they have a lot of promise throughout the championship anyway. I mean, and even over the next year, it depends on what Ranieri wants to do. Who knows? It could be very interesting, and I think it also showed promise that Ranieri's got a very nice-looking career in Super League.
So there's a 42-point gap at the moment. Are we still thinking it's going to stay as it was? You guys were quite. I think you guys were sort of edging your bets towards Midnight last time.
I was and still am.
Looking at how good the Nijo was, I think that Nijo will be able to pull it back.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see on that one, aren't we, I suppose? Anyone else caught your eye in the Super League race? Any little shout-outs?
I think the guys that we've already covered, Morris, Rainieri, really. I can't think of anyone else who had a standout performance, Lewis.
No, I do think I agree with that. Morris, I still think Morris. I agree with you that he threw away a race win, but still, even with that he threw away a race win, that's still very impressive in the sense of he could have got it. It's a shame that he threw away through strategy, but the fact is that he's got the pace to get there. It's an impressive thing to see.
A couple of guys I just wanted to make a little note of. We've got Adam Roos in the Woods getting 7th, some decent points for them.
Yes.
Jordan Weeks also pulling himself back again, getting 10th for the Norwegian. A few more points kicking in his bag as well. And Mark Stanton, the constant as well, managed to pick up 3 points as well, which for them is all, nearly half their total already, so they're now up to 7 points. But that does help them through as well. Some of these small teams, points like that can make a big difference. So should we move on to the Super Cup?
Yeah, so I think the Super Cup has really had a bit of a pendulum shift. If there was one race to define one section of the season from another, Monza would be it, because you had Ranieri dominate the round at his home track, and from what we know, and I believe this is going to be true for the rest of the season, Ryan Walker has now left the Super Cup. I believe he's got work commitments now on a Wednesday. Not sure whether he's going to be taking part in some Super League stuff. Don't know whether he's going to be returning at all. But the fact of the matter is that Oscar Hardwick has now taken the lead of the championship, and the main objective or the main battle that we have to see now is whether Ranieri can catch down Hardwick. And we figured out actually that if Ranieri wins every race from now until the end of the season, and Hardwick comes second in every race until the end of the season, Hardwick will win the championship by 3 points. So there's still plenty to play for, and I really can't wait to see how the entire thing spans out.
Yeah, you said before the broadcast that Monza was going to be the turning point in the championship, and to be quite honest, I kind of thought that it was going to go. I thought Walker would still maintain the lead. However, he started from the pit lane for whatever reason. And I think we both agreed that he probably would have finished on the podium had he actually started from the grid. But either way, it was the turning point of the championship. And, so you were completely correct there. And it is the interesting thing of, can Ranieri actually close that gap? I mean, we had such a great duel throughout the beginning of the race.
Oh, yeah.
Between the pair, between Ranieri and Hardwick. And it just kept all attention for all of about 5-10 laps, or even longer than that, really. Then it dissipated, and Ranieri just took off. Ranieri is so quick at the moment in those Super Cup cars, but I hope that that's how the championship is going to look now. Is just Ranieri and Hardwick with locked horns, absolutely going at it. I think it could be a really, really interesting season.
I can completely agree, lads. I mean, obviously we've got. We should probably quickly run through actually that Ranieri did win the race, as you already alluded to, with Oscar Hardwick second. But the man I wanted to look at as well is Wyatt Godden, in Target, because Target had a particularly good race, going third and fourth as well. He really impressed me and could be the one potentially to mix it up on certain tracks, because like you say, if they finish first and second each race and it ends up with, what would you say, 3 points, was it? Difference?
Yeah.
Only takes one person to have jumped in, nicked a second, and Oscar Hardwick down to third, and then he's lost the championship by a point at one race. So it's that close. It's going to be a brilliant battle.
I tell you what, I'm interested to see what Wyatt could do. In the race, it wasn't too obvious that he was going to make much impact. He was very much... he was 40 seconds behind the lead, but he was 20 seconds ahead of fourth place. But what we got from what I saw in the practice times, he was in that class which Ranieri and Hardwick were in. And let's not forget, Wyatt is a real-life Formula 2000 driver. This guy knows exactly what he's doing, and in practice, he proved that he should be up there. Target have been looking for a guy to replace Villa Lapala for the majority of the season now. They have found their man in Wyatt, and I do have a sneaking suspicion that he will play a very pivotal role in this championship battle to come.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how he progresses in the championship. He was definitely the standout, rookie, or even the standout driver outside of Ranieri and Hardwick, really. Absolutely impressive display throughout practice session when, he pulled out some pretty shocking times. I think throughout quite a few of them, he was P1 in the practice sessions, and, then it was all jumbling about, and there he was back to P1, and it all jumbled about, and there he was again. Really impressive performance, and I'm really interested to see where things are going to go in the next 7 rounds.
The other one I thought of, obviously now, with the shock news that Ryan Walker's not going to be around, is who's Satellite bring in to replace him? Because obviously they've still got a constructors standing they want to get to.
I know they've brought in Brandon Warren, and no offense to Brandon, as a fellow Formula Challenge competitor, I wish him all the best of luck with Satellite. For the life of me, I don't understand why they've signed him. Brandon hasn't exactly set the world alight in Formula Challenge. And the fact of the matter is that they've got David Nichols as the second driver at Satellite, who's only had one finish in his entire Super Cup season. He had a 13th. Every other event he's been at, he's retired. So...
Yeah, it has been a very one-man team at the moment. Do you feel as though that... You don't sound very confident, no disrespect to Warren, you don't sound very confident with him.
I say...
He did manage to get himself in the Formula Challenge a fourth in the British Grand Prix, I believe. But other than that...
He hasn't consistently been there, though. I mean, the sort of guys I would look to...
The man can finish. He's only retired 2 Formula Challenge races, which, considering Formula Challenge is Formula Challenge, 2 races is pretty good going. But you're right, it hasn't set the world alight. But a bit of consistency maybe for Satellite, like you say, with their other car not finishing very often.
I think a bit of consistency is great. And in Super Cup, which has very much been a survival of the fittest sort of competition this year, that's needed. But the fact of the matter is they've got a regular podium sitter out of the team, and they're bringing in someone who realistically is only looking at a handful of points per race, because as consistent a driver he is, I doubt there'll be enough retirements to bump him up into the top 10 every time.
But to argue with your point there, James, some drivers tend to work better in the faster cars, and I don't think Satellite are just chucking in any old driver. They're kind of like, oh well, you're good, get in the car, drive it around a bit, or you're okay, get in the car, drive around a bit. I think they should have done some testing behind closed doors, just seeing which drivers can do what with what they have, and then picking the best from that litter. But you've also got to think of it this way, is that in Formula Challenge, the people who are constantly getting podiums, consistently fighting up there, are generally the top load in that championship, and they're not going to move. Not for like the whole season, which is what Satellite are looking for.
Perhaps the best thing to do is just to wait and see how he does then.
Exactly. Wait for Spa.
We'll watch with very close interest this next race. I mean, not to put you under any pressure, Brandon, but we will all be scrutinising you very closely. So, if you do you fancy running down the constructor standings, James? See if they made any difference.
Well, I mean, it's a strange constructor standings now because you have CSG very prominently at the top. And I mean, they're clear by well over 100 points now, so I really doubt whether anyone's going to challenge them. The next people are Innovision, and they've had personnel issues now. They had Loknovsky leave, and they've sort of been interchanging between Parker, Bennett, and they had Spender Vries in the car for this race, who took home 4th, I believe it was. So very impressive on debut for him there. But it's all shifting and changing. As for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, though, very close-knit battle. You got Target Racing, Target Racing is now fully ahead of Satellite Racing. Satellite Racing is falling into the clutches of Multiforce, though, undoubtedly. At the same time, you've got Scuderia Basilia coming up with these race wins constantly. So there's still a lot to play for, really. And although I'd say that 1st and 2nd are decided now at this early stage, the battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th is still very much on at the moment.
I mean, I'd agree with you there that CSG have almost got this sewn up, like you say, without any driver issues. I wouldn't say Innovision has definitely got 2nd. You know, only being a few points ahead of Target isn't by any means unsurmountable. But yeah, it's going to be very close and interesting to see what, like I say, 2nd to 6th do. I wouldn't be surprised to see if Ranieri keeps going what he's doing to get the Brasilia up to 2nd potentially as well.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's going to be the focus point of the Constructors' Championships for the next few races, is the 2nd to 6th. I think, as has been stated, the CSG have pretty much got this sorted. I think even below that, you've got a few teams that are fairly close to each other, such as SRS and Vodball. There's going to be some various interesting duels. There's a little story between all of the smaller teams, but I think CSG have got the top part all pretty much sorted, and unless they completely fall off the rails before the end of the season, they've got their constructors sorted. We'll just have to see what happens to CSG, but it looks pretty good for them.
We kind of alluded to it, but the Drivers' Championship standings.
So in the drivers, of course, as we say, Oscar Harvick now leading with Ryan Walker 2nd. You got Ranieri fully in 3rd now, ahead of Loknovsky, of course, who's not taking part in the competition anymore, and Grimseth, who's really fallen out of form, really. And I think it's only because the guys below him are either not doing well themselves or have had misfortune that he's still in that position. Because below him, you've got James Shepherd, who doesn't take part anymore, Morten Berneson, who had an amazing qualifying, actually qualified 3rd, but then was taken out rather early on and was forced to retire. Roy Schroten, who hasn't been here for the past couple of times, and Scott Bennett, who's had a couple of races out. And then you got Patrick Gatewood, Mark Wicks. So it's, I think Grimseth's really got to pick up his game, because sooner or later, if he doesn't, he's going to have everyone else chomping away at the bit. But as for the top, it's very much clear that Ranieri and Hardwick are in some clean air, shall we say, with Walker out of the game now.
Yeah, it's a shame that Ryan Walker's obviously gone out of the game, because it does mean that we're now probably looking at a good 2-horse race. Obviously, I know Mawson, being one of my drivers, is definitely trying to get that 5th place and was absolutely distraught after his fantastic qualifying to be taken out on the grid. Isn't a normal situation, so hopefully he'll be fighting back next time. We were obviously looking, some of the guys that were coming into this as well, all coming up from this, saw the top guys from here moving into Superleague. So let's have a look down at the Formula Challenge and see the potential guys coming up and into some of these spare seats that are forming now.
Yeah, indeed. And as the way Formula Challenge works, there are 2 races on a Tuesday. It happens. There's 2 races. You do a qualifying session, and then whoever gets pole obviously starts in front of the grid in race 1. And the winner in race 1 was Gagzella in some pretty tricky conditions. We had it started in the wet and it gradually dried up. Quite tricky to pick your point as to when to go in the pits, but Gagzella nailed it and won over Tapper. And then 3rd place was Kantonen. So, what do you guys think of the race?
Wet.
Tricky.
It was. I tell you what, that race, the round overall was possibly my darkest round in sim racing in the past year of sim racing that I have done.
Well, I probably should point out this point of view is that both my co-commentators here drive in this series. Well, I say drive, they turn up.
We try to,
yeah.
My apologies, lads. Combined total of what, 8 laps on the first race?
Not far off.
I apologise, but you were there, and so it's first-hand point of view, which I quite like. So, I'm sorry, James, to cut you off. You're obviously saying that the conditions were particularly poor.
Well, they are, and it didn't help that. I couldn't change my tyres essentially to dry compound, so I was a bit unhappy with that, and I ended up retiring because there were complications in the race, which meant that I just couldn't go on really. But I think fair play to Gagzella. He's been under a lot of pressure these past few rounds, having not scored a win since Canada, and here he comes back on stomping form. I think Fideku retired. He was involved in the complications with me. He was very strong, and I think he might very well have had Gagzella had he been able to stay in the race. But fair play to Gagzella for doing it once again, proving that he should definitely be up at the sharp end of the grid.
Yeah, Gagzella hasn't really fallen apart as we were wondering since he had a win since Montreal whether he'd actually just kind of crumbled under the pressure of having 3 people have actually really gotten the hang of these cars now. Just chomping away at the back of Gagzella's car, and Gagzella though he pulled it together and he took the race win. So that's 25 points for him. Really great stuff there. Rest of the people who scored points, you had Clip in 4th, Joseph in 5th, Warren in 6th, Palm 7th, Mebius 8th, Brugman 9th, Monroe 10th, De Vries 11th, Sovic 12th, McNaughton 13th. Jacobs 14th and Warren 15th. Correction. That was Brandon Warren in 15th. Ben Warren was in 6th. There's 2 Warrens that start with a B. It's only massively complicated for a co-commentator.
I mean, we both looked we were all speaking last time. We were saying we were going to focus very much and have a look if Gagzella can come back and do the business, and obviously straight away race 1 he does. I don't know whether he's listening, but nonetheless,
yeah. It's one of the things that we said last week was that I thought that Gagzella would be really one to look out for, and evidently I was correct, and I'm very happy. And as much as I don't like to be too snobbish, but I was right. So, anyway, I'm just gonna have a little look at race 2 as well. Similar sort of conditions was race 2. The kind of tricky starting on the wets and then gradually moving over to the dry, quite complicated and tricky conditions. Which for some, made a race that crumbled, such as James. Then you had people who absolutely nailed the conditions and got the race win, which was Lars Brugman. Great drive. He didn't actually pit, so he must have started on the slicks. Really good stuff there from Brugman. Second place was Fiddick, and third was Jacobs. Fiddick and Jacobs are 2 of the people who we are considering to be effectively title contenders. They're close, but we'll get to the championship in a minute. But yeah, it was a really good drive from Brugman.
Agree. I don't know what tyre he started on though, because me being me, I was kind of smart in realising, well, I know it's 51% wetness, but I need to start on the slicks, otherwise I won't be able to change onto the slicks at all. And I mean, it was ridiculously slippery, and I don't understand quite how he was able to control the car through those conditions. So if he did start on the slicks along with Xavier Tacavlo as well, he got 6th, he didn't stop. I think fair play to them. It's not easy to pull off a no-stop strategy in those conditions, and those 2 did extremely well to make the most of it. But still, I mean, looking at Gagzella once again, another top 10. Really good job, and though Fiddick and Jacobs were on the podium, I think the race 1 let them down, and ultimately that's a free 25 points for Gagzella.
Well, it is, yeah. However, when you look at it, because they had such a poor first race, Fiddick and Jacobs, it meant their second race, starting from the absolute lowliness of about 30th or so, to pull themselves up to the top 3 is an outstanding race, really. I know, like I've looked on and watched David Fiddick's race from race 2, and it's impressive stuff. If you get a chance to have a watch, by the way, if you haven't seen it already, be on board with him and watch through. It's very much of what Tapper did a couple of races ago. Great stuff to watch, even down at this championship as well.
Yeah, Formula Talent is can be quite difficult. They're not long races, so and just nailing the strategy is sometimes quite difficult. And Brugman did a perfect job of it. Also, to run you through the rest of the race, was Clip in fourth again. Was he in fourth last time? I can't remember.
He's fourth in both races.
I said it not too long ago, but there you go. That's my memory failing on me. Fifth was Ben Warren. Sixth was De Carvalho. Seventh was Gaxella. Eighth, Palm. Ninth, Joseph. 10th, De Vries. 11th, Sarpilla. 12th, Cable, who I don't recognise the name. Is he a debutant?
He was a debutant, I believe.
Okay, so there you go. That's an interesting, points on debuts. Good stuff. 13th, Nieminen. 14th, Kantanen. And 15th was Mikko Jalkanen. It was an interesting race. And how many laps did you manage this time, James?
I didn't even manage one. I was effortlessly punted off by an unnamed driver.
I must say,
this
Lewis,
is why your weekend was not.
You did so much better.
I did.
Yeah.
I finished the race. I
Finished and came 20th.
I did.
Let's celebrate success.
Yes.
Yes, from the pit lane as well. So, yeah.
We know you like the pits because I think you made about 4 pit stops in race 1. So, obviously, very well done, though, mate. And hopefully, we'll see you in the points at the next race, shall we?
Yes, I should hope so. That'll be smart in only a short while, but. Anyway.
Come on, lads, you both got to keep it going. I want to be sitting in next week going, and my pole sitter, race winner, and podium man, Mr. James Kirk, and second place, or the other way around.
Wait, hang on.
I do like how you. I like where this is going, Lewis. Let the man finish his sentence.
Obviously, completely impartial. If you want to do it the other way around, by all means, just don't do team orders.
Right? No, well, because we're on different teams.
Well, yes, you are.
Anyway, to run you through the top 10 in the championships, Gaxella is obviously leading. He's on 334 points, 124 clear of David Fiddick. In third place, Thomas Jacobs. Fourth, Nieminen. Fifth, Melim. Sixth, Tapper, putting on the impressive displays to put him further and further up the championship table. Seventh is Joseph. Eighth is McNaughton. Ninth is Hoekstra. And 10th is Clip. So, here's an interesting question. Do we think Gaxella has fallen off enough in consideration that he did actually get a race win? So, he's not really lost it that much. Can Fiddick, Jacobs, or Tapper close in that much of a gap in the next 7 races, which is 14 races, even 7 rounds? So that's quite a long way. But can anyone pull that gap back?
No. Would be literally the simple solution.
That would be my answer.
Unless Gaxella packs it in or has to miss a few races, I can't see it happening. It's a big gap. As good as Fiddick and Jacobs and people are, that's a big gap.
I want to say yes. Realistically, I doubt it.
Yeah, I would agree. As much as we all want a really nice, chunky Drivers' Championship, I don't think we're going to get it. I think Gaxella has built that gap up with an absolutely perfect, first few rounds of actually building that gap. While some people were struggling with finding the sweet spot in the car, he'd already found it and he'd already got it sorted. And he took complete advantage of that. And now he's just reaping the rewards and is leading the championship by an extreme margin. However, it's when you look at the Constructors' Championships that things get interesting. Now, I think last time when this was read out, we didn't realise how close this actually was. Syming are the team that are leading. They're on 461 points now. Storm, though, are in second place, and they have 451. That is only 10 points difference. It's very, very close between those lot.
Actually, I think if there was a small error on the system because Syming were down to 3 drivers. So actually, I think if you take 10 points off Syming, I think that's where we're actually at.
So they're on the same points?
I think they are, but I would want to confirm that for next time. But
okay, so they could be closer than stated before. But to say that the Drivers' Championship is that sparse, but the Constructors' Championship is that close, we've got a really interesting Constructors' Championship to be focusing on here. This is where the championship should be looking at the moment, is the Constructors, because it's so very close at the top of the table.
Like I say, it's so close. It's outrageous. It's still that. It's all going to be on that Gaxella, really, because although McNaughton did pick up points this time, it's still not as consistent and not as many points as the team need when you've got the two Simink guys sitting in the championship in like second and fifth.
Yeah.
So it's
also though, it's
sorry, I was just going to say, it's that consistency that I think
it
will
is.
get Simink there come the end of the year.
James, thoughts? Simink or Storm?
I think it's so hard to tell at this stage. I mean, if the two of them are on the same points, I think that does them justice. You've got Gaxella clearly is the strongest driver, but then you've got Fidekin, I think it's Malim, the main second driver at Simink, sort of in the middle, and then you got McNaughton, who I think is the fourth strongest out of the lot. So I think it's going to be so hard to tell. I wouldn't want to take a guess at this present stage.
I think it's all based on whether Gaxella can actually keep pulling these wins out as to whether Storm can take the lead in the championship. If he's going to be messing around with the likes of Fiddick and Jacobs and Tapper even, that's when Storm are going to start costing themselves points in the championship, and that is when Simink will start taking advantage. However, despite these two being so very close, Kayala are 233 points back. So that is a massive margin. But then, even from them back, you've got Royal Blue and United Racers, very, very close with that group. You've got Tanskanen, who have Tapper. They're not too far behind. So I think the championship, the constructors table, has got it's got like a lot of very interesting variables to it. And I think the constructors championship is actually going to really heat up throughout the season. We've got 40 races left, 7 rounds. That is a lot of points on offer, and the constructors table is really where to be watching in Formula Challenge.
Well, it's definitely one to watch. We're always very excited with the Formula Challenge because it's so different to the other series. You guys love it that much, you decide to drive in it as well. So I'm very impressed by some of these drivers, particularly. I'm sure we're going to see them further up the championship this season or next season. So guys, the whole week, you look at the 3 rounds as a whole. Anyone particularly impress you? Even a driver of the week, let's call it that. What would you call a driver of the week for you, James, then first?
My driver of the week personally would be Ranieri for his amazing performance in Superleague. Well, I think if you have the same ideas as me, Lewis, I think that just shows how good a job he did do.
Yeah, I would have said Ranieri. He really, really impressed in that Super League race, and obviously winning the Supercup as well. And closing in that gap on Hardwick in the Supercup, he is really the driver to be watching at the moment. He's got some incredible pace, and he just really impressed me. Every single time he gets into that car, something special happens, and it's always an interesting thing to watch, is to see how Ranieri finds this extra wad of time over everyone else. So yeah, Ranieri is my driver of the week.
I was probably going to go the same way, but to be slightly different, just because let's go with Lee Morris for himself. It was a good drive, small error, but nonetheless, he's probably actually my one I'll watch next week. My driver to watch himself will be Lee Morris. Anyone particularly you guys are focusing on this week?
I am focusing on just getting round Spa.
You're focusing on your own driving. That's fair enough.
Yeah. Spa's not going to be my strongest round, so I know that I can be round Spa, but I got to concentrate quite a lot.
For Spa, I'm going to say Wyatt Godin will be one that I'll be watching fairly closely, and also who is actually going to replace Ryan Walker. I mean, if it's actually been confirmed. But then Brandon Moran, I think you said it was. Yeah. So, whoever replaces Ryan Walker, really, that will be who I'm also looking at as well. That's going to be some interesting stuff, I think.
So there we have it, guys. Any further comments for the week, or we're all just looking forward to Spa?
All just looking forward to Spa, I think. Well, actually, or GT and WSS.
Well, obviously here at GPVWC, we obviously do run the Sports Series and the GT Cup on alternate weeks, so that is coming up this week. But to catch the career ladder, so if you want to catch the Formula Challenge, we get that on the 30th of July, that's on the Tuesday, and on the night after, on the 31st, you get the Super Cup, and then on the 1st of August, you get the Superleague action, all at Spa, hopefully with some rain to make it a bit interesting, although I'm not driving. But nonetheless, you can catch all those at GPVWC, and I'm sure you'll catch us again a few days after. So I want to thank James Kirk and Lewis McGlade again for joining me. And I've been Mike Pitman, and I'll catch you up next time, guys.